Namaste, everyone. I know, right? It's April and I'm just getting here. It's like the 10th and I just have been, my month has been crazy. So I haven't had a chance to get in here and get a video started for you, a sequence, or give you something to do for April. What I wanted to talk about for April are transitions. We've talked about sun salutations and pigeons, and we talked about bridges. There's a lot of things that are good about talking about individual poses like pigeons and bridges. But how do we get to those poses, right? How do we get from point A to point B? There's some transition in between. And whether it's a flow practice where most of the transitions that we think of as transitions occur in sun salutations, you know, going standing forward fold, monkey pose. How do you get to plank? There's a transition there, right? How do you get from standing mountain to forward fold? Well, there's a transition. And there's some real common transitions that people really struggle with and find challenging. Down dog to that lunge. How do you get that foot forward? But there's also some transitions that you don't think of as transitions. We don't think of them as how do we get from point A to point B? We just go. Here we are and then we go. Transitions are every bit as important, if not more important, in a flow practice in particular, than the individual postures. Because if you're going to get hurt in a pose, odds are it's because you didn't transition in a way that suited your body, in a way that was beneficial to the practice. You know, a perfect example is how many times have you drug your toe on the mat, down dog, leg in the air, and you bring that foot forward. How many times have you drugged your toe on the mat? It hurts. Well, there's ways to do that. How many times have you taken the leg up, you bring it down, and you realize you're not in the pose the way you should. The knee is out of whack, and if the knee is out of whack, you run the risk of damaging. So the transitions make the practice smoother. The transitions make the practice more fluid and safer, right? But that can be said of a lot of different things, like transitioning from simple seated to laying down, transitioning from sitting on the floor to getting back up to standing. Transitions aren't always part of the practice. They may be how you get to the practice and what you do when the practice is done. Okay? So remember that transitions are really important. I'm going to go through two different transitions today that are just the ones that I see that happen most often in a vinyasa practice, in a flow practice. But then I'm going to do some more videos, I promise, about what other transitions look like and where you should look in your practice for your transitions, okay? So the big two transitions in a sun salutation or a flow practice are coming from down dog into the lunge and going from plank to laying on the floor. Chaturanga is not a pose. Chaturanga is a transition. Chaturanga is how do I get from plank to my cobra or my up dog. If you stay in chaturanga as a posture, think of a pose as something you may hold for even just a nanosecond or a breath. You really don't want to do that with chaturanga. It's too much pressure on the shoulders. You can stay in plank, you can lay down on the floor, but you got to get the transition between the two. Now let me show you what chaturanga looks like. Most of you know it, right? I'm going to show you the full version. I'm going to show you the knee down version because I'm talking, okay? So here's your plank, here's your modified plank, and I want to go to cobra. Well, how do I get there? I use chaturanga. Pull the shoulder blades back, I scoop the elbows in, and I lower down, right? And then I can do my cobra or whatever. If you're not doing chaturanga in a way that suits your body, you're going to trash your shoulders. You're going to hurt your low back. There's a lot going on in chaturanga. There are a couple of different variations. I originally learned it as what we called 8-point pose. We transitioned from using 8-point pose in a Western style practice because it's tough on the low back into this chaturanga practice, but it's tough on the shoulders. So you kind of have to pick and choose what's going to suit you, okay? So let me show you how we want to do, and I may come into, I'm going to show you the side angle, and I may come a little bit of a diagonal so you can see what's going on. In chaturanga, core strength matters. If you can't keep the core fully engaged as you're lowering the upper part of your torso, say from the waistband to the chest, shoulders down, then put the knees down, right? If you still have issues, roll down, and I'll show you that one too. So here's what Chaturanga looks like with the knees off the mat, right? Shoulder blades back. You rock a little forward and you lower down. You got your cobra, blah, 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 right? That takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of strength in the core, which we think of as here, but also the core is the back body. Core is everything from hips to pits, right? So there's a lot going on in the back, the traps, the rhomboids. But also it's about intention. I need to get to the floor and I need to do so safely. That may not work for you. If you can't keep your ears pulled back and lower down as a unit, if you're letting the head fall, the body's going to fall. So work on the details of how you do the pose. All right, so let's play details on Chaturanga for a minute. All right, so Chaturanga, we're going to do the knee down version. Shoulder blades back, and I'm pushing the floor away. I'm not collapsing into the shoulders. I'm pushing the floor away, and I'm taking a moment and I'm pull the navel center in on the exhale. I give a little lift through Mula Bandha, that's your pelvic floor, right? Now, if I am weak in my core and shoulders, I'm going to collapse like this and take the body back, or I'm going to collapse like that. How do we avoid the collapsing Chaturanga? Slow and steady, right? Play with hand placement. I can't tell you exactly what's going to work for you. I can only say that these are the things that you need to look at. If your hands are really close together, and this is how I learned Chaturanga many years ago, you put your hands this close together. That is just too close for my broad shoulders. Shoulder blades back. I take my hands much wider. In my Chaturanga, my hands are that wide. Okay? Play with hand placement. This may not work as well for you as this, or somewhere in between. Also, if your hands are way up, in other words, your shoulders are behind the wrists, you're not necessarily going to be able to activate what's going on in the back body to help support you. So let's look at it one more time. Plank, modified version. Pull shoulder blades back. If the head isn't, if you're looking down at your knees, pull the ears back. Set the belly. Push forward just a tiny bit. Drop down slowly. Right? And come back up. Right. All right, so if that's still a problem, and it can take time to get the strength to do that, you're going to do a roll down version. It helps teach the engagement. It's like waving. The body waves down. So let's look at that. Inhale. And you're going to control lower thighs, pelvis and hips, belly and chest. Can you see the difference? And you're going to come up almost the same way. Up, push into the floor, and engage the belly. So you wave down by lowering the thighs, the hips, the belly in a controlled fashion, as opposed to doing belly flop asana. Belly flop asana is when you just let go and just no control over what's going on. So I'm going to do those back to back. I'm going to do them so you can see the difference. I'm going to do them with the toes and the knees off the mat so you can see the difference that way, okay? All right, so here's your full Chaturanga. And this is Chaturanga, taking the body forward and down, right? Up. And then back up, however you want to do it. Now this is going to be the roll down version. Knees, thighs, belly, up, and then same, right? And you can go to down dog from there. Now maybe you have the strength and the back doesn't like it, then you do the roll down version, right? You have to play with what's going to work for you. You want to avoid, if possible, the elbows being out. Try and draw them in. Just remember that Chaturanga is a transition. You don't stay in Chaturanga, you use it to get from plank to down on the floor. I originally learned it as 8-point pose because there's 8 points of contact to the floor. And it's a nice one in Ashtanga practice in particular, because from 8-point pose, you can push from the feet up into upward facing dog. But it can be a nice way to use to transition to the floor if your back doesn't have any issues, but you're trying to protect the shoulders. You just have to play with it. So let me show you 8-point pose. You literally have 8 points of contact with the floor. So toes, there's 2, knees and hands, and then you lower the chin and the chest. All right? And there you go, boom. And you come up that way. So 8-point pose is plank, knees, chin and chest, and come up. The only thing you have to be careful about with that, if your back is okay, is the neck can get kind of tight. You really just have to play with your practice and decide which one of those is going to work for you. Don't do too many at once. Don't spend 30 minutes just doing chaturangas. You won't be able to feed yourself, right? Arms will be tight. Take your time. Just in a practice, know, what am I supposed to be doing? There's not time in a vinyasa practice class for an instructor to teach you, this is what you're going to do in class, and this is why. Chaturanga is a transition. It gets you to the floor. Do it safely. That means put your knees down. I want to walk around the room and tap everybody on the shoulder that needs to put their knees down. Most people should put their knees down. If you're belly flop asana, belly flop asana, belly flop asana, for months you're never going to gain any real strength. So, knees down. Okay, so now let's look at the transition for downward facing dog and how do you get that foot forward. So, this is the way most people do it. Downward facing dog, right? The leg is up. We sweep the foot forward, right? And here's our lunge, right? Most people, especially people just learning this, how to do the practice in particular, don't get that. They don't have the hip range of motion. They don't have the core strength. So here's what it usually looks like if they're not sure, right? Up, and they go here. And then they're like this in their lunge, right? And it's not beneficial to the knee. It's also not gaining you any strength. So there's a couple of different tips you can use and techniques you can use to get that foot forward. If you're tight in the hips and nursing a low back issue, this is what it's going to look like for you. Use these options. Doesn't mean you're less than. It means you're smart and you're protecting your body. So here is one version of down dog. Okay? Take the right leg up. You're going to bring that toe down. You're going to bring the left knee down. Look forward where you want the foot to go. Sweep it forward and come up. So that, and then if you're still strong enough, you want to do this, you can bring it up to your full lunge that way, okay? So that's one way. So the instructor's going to call it something like this. Downward facing dog. Take the right foot in the air. Inhale. Exhale. Sweep that foot forward and find your lunge. Okay. So you're just simply going to sweep that foot forward after you've put the knee down, right? So the toe comes down, knee comes down, sweep the foot forward, and you're in your lunge. You're protecting your body, your back, and you're gaining core strength that you wouldn't get by simply trying to muscle your way through or power your way through when you don't have the technique for it, okay? So the other thing to remember is maybe you can get that foot almost all the way up there, right? So maybe it looks like this, but it's still not quite right, and you grab the ankle and bring it forward. Well, that's one way to do it. Grab the ankle and bring it forward, okay? The other way is actually get height. Get some space between your body and the floor. So down dog, lift the heels, roll up just a little bit. And you see I've already come forward, so I'm pretty much already there. The leg, fill my leg up, lift and come forward. Bring the knee down and sweep it forward. That requires core strength. And I can do it on that side. On this side, guess what? I have to sweep the foot wide because I got a hip issue. Lift, come forward. I sweep that foot. Watch this leg. Comes out and in. I have to move my hand. You can go back straight, but it has to sweep out to come up. So sweep the foot forward if you want. Remember, if you're trying to get the foot forward and it gets almost there, you probably just don't have the height yet. Bring the body up, legs in the air, bring the heel up, look a little forward, shift a tiny bit forward, and then sweep the foot the rest of the way without collapsing, and see how that works for you. So there's 2 transitions. We're going to talk about some other transitions moving forward, but play with those 2 different ways to get in and out of down dog, and the different ways you can play with your chaturanga. If you're not doing the transitions correctly, you're not going to gain the strength and progress in your practice quite the same way, okay? Remember to do your practice with sukha, effortless work. So don't grit the teeth, clench the jaw, and don't sell yourself short. So sukha isn't always about being at ease with the physical practice, but don't beat yourself up because your chaturanga doesn't look like what you think it should, or what the magazines show us, or what the fancy people on Instagram show us, right? Sukha, effortless work here, as well as in the body, right? Namaste, everyone. Let me know how that goes. Play with your practice and see if any of those tips or techniques either need more explanation from me or how they work for you, all right?